listener production.
Hi, Natarsha Belling with you and welcome to the afternoon edition of The Briefing. Coming up in our deep dive, we unpack the latest developments in the Middle East crisis and whether the US will back Israel and start attacking Iran. But first, let's check the afternoon headlines this Thursday, the 19th of June. A major Melbourne shopping centre has been locked down for the second day in a row. Emergency crews were called to Northland Shopping Centre today after a fire at the local mire with shoppers and staff evacuated. It comes after a man was arrested and charged with allegedly driving a stolen four-wheel drive through the middle of the shopping centre yesterday. Shoppers were forced to jump out of the way of the speeding vehicle. Incredibly, no one was injured.
A white four-wheel drive went flying past, probably about 15 metres from me.
Latest ABS data shows Australia's unemployment figures are holding steady at 4.1%. 2,500 jobs were lost across the country in May, thanks to a major drop in part-time gigs, even though full-time work increased. And some of Australia's top universities have taken a hit in new global rankings. 25 of Australia's universities dropped in rank this year, including the University of New South Wales and the University of Sydney. The University of Melbourne also slipped down the QS World University Rankings for 2026, taking 19th place, but it still maintained its position as Australia's top-ranked institution. Now it's time to get into our deep dive on the Middle East crisis. Donald Trump came out firing our time this morning, labelling Iran as schoolyard bullies, but wouldn't confirm nor deny what military action, if any, the US will take.
I may do it, I may not do it. I mean, nobody knows what I'm going to do. I can tell you this, that Iran's got a lot of trouble, and they want to negotiate. And I said, why didn't you negotiate with me before? All this death, you could have done fine. You would have had a country.
There are reports, though, today the US president has approved plans to attack Iran, as Tehran stands firm, warning it will target US military bases in the Middle East. As the military strikes continue between Israel and Iran, the Australian government says they're doing all it can to evacuate Australians stranded in the war zone. So as we all nervously watch on for what happens next, we ask Foreign Affairs expert Dr Keith Suter, will the US attack Iran? How serious is this latest escalation? And will it lead to another world war? Keith, thanks so much for joining us. How concerned should we be with this ever-changing escalation in the war in the Middle East between Israel and Iran?
It's the most dangerous time we've had since 2003, which is when the Americans launched their attack on Iraq. So it's a crisis that comes along only every few decades.
In regards to what the US is doing right now, the world is nervously watching on as it seems we wait to see what the US, in particular, Donald Trump does. He made some quite interesting statements today, basically saying, I don't know whether we'll get involved with striking Iran or not. What's your reaction to those comments? It's like he was playing a schoolyard game.
Trump's problem is that he's very divided on this issue. On the one hand, he won the last election, promising no more involvement in wars, including in the Middle East. So his MAGA base, Make America Great Again base, does not want to get involved in the Middle East any more than they want to get involved in Ukraine. So that's one strand of it. On the other hand, he's also under pressure from the Israeli lobby and others on the more conservative end of the Republican Party, the more, shall we say, establishment end. They're saying we've got to go in to support Israel, therefore we've got to go to war against Iran. And Trump is having to balance out these two conflicting forces. Trump's genius, until today perhaps, is that he's been able to bring together a number of different strands of people's thinking. The blue-collar workers, who are the ones usually end up paying the price in a war, and at the same time, the tech brothers, from California and all that sort of thing.
Elon Musk.
Yeah, Elon Musk. He's been great at bringing them all together into this large tent. But what we are now seeing is the split between, on the one hand, the traditional base of the Republican Party, the pro-Israeli lobby, and the political party which he's really formed, Make America Great Again, who don't want to get involved in any more wars. They've had spent too much blood and treasure over the last 20 years and have got nothing to show for it.
Keith, it's interesting you mentioned the Make America Great Again base because I don't know whether I presume it was on purpose. He had a MAGA hat on today during his press conference.
Yeah.
Right now, we are still on very, very nervously watching what he may do. What do you believe the chances are is that he will join Israel in striking Iran?
I think there'll be a lot of people telling him not to do that, including his own intelligence community, by the way. The intelligence community, through Tulsi Gabbard, said weeks ago that Iran is not near building a nuclear weapon. And so, then Trump has disowned her in the last few hours, saying, well, I don't listen to her. But the intelligence community itself does not share Israel's perception of the problem.
So do you believe this could be another scenario of the weapons of mass destruction?
Exactly.
There are no nuclear...
Oh, I wouldn't say there are none, but I'm just saying that Israel has got a sense of urgency which is not shared perhaps by other members of the intelligence community.
So where does Trump stand with this? Because the pressure is on from Israel for the US to support it.
Absolutely, and this is the worry that he's got. And if the Americans are not allowed out of Israel, Israel's closed all the airspace, and you then end up with attacks being inflicted on Israel, which end up with Americans being killed, the ordinary civilians in Israel, that will put pressure on Trump to come in on the side of Israel.
So in regards to Iran's response, we've seen comments come out over the last couple of days. The Deputy Foreign Minister has basically said, quote, if the Americans decide to get involved militarily, we will have no choice but to retaliate wherever we find the targets necessary to be acted upon. That is clear and simple because we are acting in self-defense.
Yep. So there are about 40,000 American troops stationed throughout the Middle East. Obviously none in Iran, but you've got them scattered in Syria, obviously in Iraq, some in Israel, Jordan, etc. So they are all vulnerable to being killed. Now, Trump began the evacuation of non-essential personnel just over a week ago because he was expecting this war to come along. So he's been evacuating them, but you've still got service personnel who are vulnerable to being attacked by the Iranians directly. Secondly, there's a risk of pro-Iranian groups wanting to kill local Americans wherever they happen to be, such as in Iraq. So Americans are in a very exposed position at the moment. So if they were to launch an attack on Iran, yes, Iran could retaliate and start killing Americans, in which case it's on for young and old.
What's the potential for this to end up like World War III? Because if they do then decide to attack America, will they attack Iran? I'm talking about Americans in other countries at the moment. Do you think it could have the consequence of that?
Oh, they could certainly kill other Americans. And don't forget, we've got our own Shia community here in Australia, and they may well want to attack targets here, thinking globally and acting locally. But I would not say that there's a risk of a world war. It's not World War III. In order for it to be a world war, you'd need to have two very large groupings willing to fight. Now, obviously, America and Israel is on one side, but Iran is pretty isolated. Russia will not risk its own safety by going in to support Iran. Remember, it's already bogged down in Ukraine. China, also nominally an Iranian ally, is not going to go to war with the United States over Iran. It's too far away. They've got their own equivalent of Make China Great Again, focusing on trade, not war. The perhaps exception might be North Korea, supplying weapons to Iran. But again, I don't expect North Korea to come in on the side of Iran. So it won't be a world war, but it could be a very dangerous regional conflict covering that part of the Middle East.
Keith, you mentioned before this latest escalation is 40 years in the making. Unpack for us, historically, what has happened between Israel and Iran?
So Israel and Iran, going back for thousands of years, that'll be Israel and Persia, have got along quite well. So some of the heroes in Israel's history are actually Persian figures. And this has been maintained up until quite recently, 1979. In 1979, the Shah of Iran was overthrown. He fled into exile and died in exile. the Ayatollah Khomeini, who was a Shia religious leader, took over control in Iran, and Iran at that point became very anti-Israeli. There's a big Jewish community in Iran. So it just shows the links that go back for thousands of years. But under the Ayatollah, Iran became very anti-Israel and has threatened to get Israel blown off the map and that sort of thing. So from 1979 onwards, we knew we were going to be having problems between Israel and Iran. And so we've had separate wars between Israel and the Arab states, and now it's a conflict between Israel and Iran. And by the same token, Israel has been warning about Iran for 40-odd years as well.
So what sparked this latest escalation? There is a school of thought that Israel thought it was a good time because there is a fragile leadership scenario right now in Iran, that it was the right time to strike.
I think there are a number of reasons. One is that Israel clearly is concerned about the risk of the development of nuclear weapons. Now, the US intelligence community does not share that same appreciation. They don't think that Iran is close to acquiring nuclear weapons. It's working on them, but they're not nearly as close as Israel is suggesting. So Israel figured, look, we've got to act. Secondly, because of the conflict in Gaza and the way that the Iranian proxies have become involved in supporting the Palestinian cause, Israel has also fought not only in Gaza, but against what are called the Iranian proxies. The big one is Hezbollah, which is southern Lebanon. So when you talk about Israel and Iran, that's a distance of 1,500 kilometres. That's a huge distance. So they don't have a common border. In the case of Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, they're just over the border. So over the years, Iran has had a defence mechanism whereby if any attack were to take place on Iran, then Israelis would know Hezbollah would attack Israel. But now that Hezbollah itself has been destroyed in the last few months, to a very large extent, Israel has a window of opportunity in which to act, and it's taken up that window.
Right now, we have our federal government warning Australians, to try and get repatriation flights right now out of the Middle East. If you are in the Middle East as an Australian, how dangerous is that situation right now?
Very dangerous, and they should be following smarttraveller.gov.au. It's interesting we're talking about planes. I'm just wondering about whether or not there are boats available to get people across to Cyprus, for example, or into Greece. So I think that there may be ways of getting people out. I see also the Australian government is trying to get people into Jordan. At that moment, the airspace there is clear. So you might be able to evacuate from there, but certainly don't hang around in that region. As I say, there's a risk of a regional war.
We appreciate your time as always. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.
That was Foreign Affairs expert Dr Keith Suter. And that's it for this episode of the afternoon edition of The Briefing. We'd love you to subscribe or follow us on Instagram @The Briefing Podcast. I'm Natarsha Belling. Thanks for your company.